And what we do, we have like what's called the internal strength model. So we have different ecologies. So you have the nervous system, which is something that you can specifically train. You have the connective tissue, which is just the white tissue that allows for force transmission to occur, right? And then we also have red muscle tissue, right? And so when you start, so this is what I was seeing at Westside, right? Is you guys figured out, you guys were so good at scaling up the nervous system that I was seeing shit on my end blow up.
Yes, yes.
Which you're not going to see in everyday life.
Yes.
Most people, they're not like if you throw max effort, like you're probably a really good, you probably have more than I do, right? Experience where you start to say max effort and they go, oh no, like we can't do max effort. Okay. So really what you're saying is nobody's really training, as the Soviets would say, they're not using the superior method to scale up the neurology.
Yes.
So they're not seeing the potential of the human nervous system. At Westside, that thing's getting scaled, right? And then it's like, okay. And then when you look at dynamic effort method, well, now it's like, okay, well, now get that neurology to output at a faster speed. So now it's like all these speed barriers that, George Halbert kind of taught me about. Now it's like where for listeners, it's like, hey, if you're on a bench press and you get to that sticking point or that mini max, right? One of the things that dynamic effort method does is it gets you to get there faster so that you blow through it.
Yes.
It's just a very simple, there's a lot of other stuff. I don't want to simplify.
No, it's a simple way to explain it. The way that I've always explained it was if I was to hold a one board, 5 inches off your chest and the barbell's on your chest, and then you push into it slow, with a slow speed, I can probably resist it. You're going to hit the board and you're not going to be able to do anything. Now, if you smash that as hard as you possibly can, right, that board's going to move, right? Maybe it won't move all the way to a lockout, but if that's where your sticking point was and you got it to move a quarter inch, a half inch, well, you just went through where your mini max was, and then you're able to lock that out. That's that compensatory acceleration.
Yes.
Right? And it's a neural thing too, because you have to learn that. For a lot of, now we go back to your background, right? So coming through explosive sports, football and stuff like that, you kind of know it's easier to make that connection. Some people, it's a little bit harder because they're going to fall on the spectrum. How I was always faster than I was strong. Right? There are other people that were stronger than they were fast, but that doesn't negate the fact that both have to be accounted for. Right? Where if I just didn't do any of the explosive work to keep that, because the argument against that, which I'm sure you've heard, is you can't get any faster past a certain age. And I'll concede that, right? I don't believe it, but I'll concede that and say, yeah, but you can get slower. Right. So but if you can just maintain that, because that explosive component's one of the first ones to go when you age.
Right.
So if you can maintain that, then you're one step ahead.
Yes.
Right. So concede that point, here you go. Now with that, so as you're having all those things kind of come in with that, the dicey area becomes the repeated effort.
Yeah.
Right. And I like that you divided it in two. Because the repeated effort to failure to repeated effort 5 RIR, is going to be different, especially if you're dealing with a therapy type of thing to where a repeated effort could be a set of 100 repetitions.
Correct.
And that's a whole different modality than a set of 6, and you can't do the 7th.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So they're vastly different, where when it gets kind of like all grouped into one, it becomes a clusterfuck.
Correct. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
That's why I always say it's 4, right?
Yeah,
but then you get some people that are like, well, in the 1990s, they wrote about it being 3, right? And it's like, yeah, but 95, they wrote about it in Science and Practice of Strength Training being 4.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So it's like things change. Like it's kind of these people hold on to these older paradigms where it's like, yeah, that was right. But now like things are changing, right? Like, and there's a lot of nuance to all this stuff.
So when you're seeing these guys that have those abilities, then you're also seeing what the gap of having a higher level of those abilities than any other athlete's really going to have.
Well, yeah, think about it. So like, it's kind of hard, right? Because like you get numb to these guys being this crazy, like strong, and even females. Like when I was there, like some of these females, like the stuff that they were doing, like it blows your mind, right? But then you kind of start to become numb to it. Whereas like I realized when I started to travel that like people didn't have that. Like they didn't really know what the human nervous system, like how you could scale it up, right? Right. And so if you look at like the max effort method and the dynamic effort method, right, you can see that those from Dr. his point, Dr. Zatsiorsky's point, they're primarily neurologically based. Okay, which means that the biology, so let's divide it up into neurology and biology.
Yes.
Right. And then we'll just kind of layer on the biological law of specificity and say that like you're either going to primarily train one or the other. Okay. So like, and if you look at the intent of training, and this is kind of one thing that you were alluding to earlier, right? Is intent. Like, what's the reason why you're doing what you're doing?
Yes.
Intent plays a huge role, and people just kind of act like everybody's got the same intent. Right.
Yeah.
But essentially like what I was seeing on my end, right? Because think about it. I was seeing lifters that, you know, they were running into, they had limiting constraints. Let's just put it that way. Okay. And the limiting constraint wasn't neurological. It was all biological.
Yes.
Okay. So like, so then I'm starting to get this feedback, right? And that's what I started to see with kind of like all the lifters at Westside that I was seeing, right? Like all these individuals, like their neurology is scaling up in essentially like a non-ecological way, right? Where it's like the neurology is just going and going and going. Okay. But what about like when the nervous system, you know, just a simple chain of logic is like the nervous system top down is going to recruit the red muscle tissue, and the red muscle tissue is going to generate a force that the white tissue is going to have to transmit.
Yes.
But what happens when you're not training the white connective tissue?
Well, yeah, we know what happens.
Okay. But here's the interesting thing. This is the interesting thing. I think that this is my interpretation of it from talking to a lot of different people. I don't think that people give Westside Barbell and like the lifters that were there the credit that they deserve. And it actually really does irritate me, right? Because they actually had they figured out that solution, right? So what ended up happening, in my opinion, right, is geared lifting came in. In gear lifting, if you look at it from the lens of the nervous system doesn't know that like when you put gear on, it doesn't know that it's behaving as external connective tissue. Let's just keep it simple. The gear, and that's why the nervous system can still continue to push. You see what it's saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so when everybody goes, well, why did Louie Simmons accept geared lifting? Because he wanted to see the potential of the human nervous system. If you talk to him, he was trying to actualize that, right? And these biological constraints. And so what happened? Now you see all the gear coming in, right? Okay, well, guess what? If you're going to use that kind of system of training and you're a lineman, you don't get to use gear. And I work with linemen. So now I have a completely different problem set. And the problem set isn't scaling up connective tissue. It's now like, well, what's going on with the joint? What's going on with the connective tissue? Right. And if you technically retrospectively look back at like a lot of the guys that I've worked with, like that was always the issue. You know, Lou had a shoulder joint replacement, patella rupture. What is that? Okay, well, those ecologies they would be considered biological. So you have it in the joint and now you have it in the connective tissue. And then I would say, well, when are you training the joint? Well, we're not. Well, when are you training the connective tissue? Well, we're only doing the connective tissue on the triceps. Well, why? They don't have to because they have gear. So like they're technically smarter, in my opinion, right? This is the frustration that I get because I'm like, listen, like these lifters are incredibly smart. Like I talk to them, I interact with them, like we're solving problems together. You see what I'm saying? And they go, oh, well, this system doesn't. It's like, well, first off, it kind of really irritates me because, you know, obviously I'm tied to a lot of these people personally. So they're my friends, right? So like I also have that as well, right? And I believe that the credit, like when you look at the evolution of strength and strength training, like there's certain people that you have to give credit to, right? And I think that what ended up happening was everybody kind of went to Westside. They maybe lingered around. Okay, we'll put some bands over barbells. We'll do some dynamic effort stuff. And they didn't understand. They didn't understand kind of the potential of the nervous system. And And when you're training at that level of like we understood it in regards to training linemen, because we had the issue where we got high school linemen, we had to put strength standards. Like we can't let them get this strong because their neurology is going to blow up their biology because they're playing a different sport. Like football, offensive lineman is different than a powerlifter, right? Like you're saying a powerlifter has three planes of motion. A lineman has to generate a very special strength that's going to be completely dynamic. So they're going to need a hip. They're going to need connective. They need all this extra stuff that you just can't put gear on. But that's kind of the beauty. So like from my perspective of kind of studying like what happened, like what you guys were doing back in the 90s, right? Where it's like you guys are at the edge. You guys are just pushing and pushing and pushing. And yeah, shit's blowing up, but then you guys figured it out. What was it? Gear. And so you kind of, and now all these, right? But other sports are essentially, in my opinion, once again, they're taking these methods and they don't know how to constrain them, let's say.
Yes.
And the neurology starts to really outpace. Why? Because maybe they have no experience. Maybe they haven't done the training themselves and they don't know how potent that system is for scaling up the neurology. But that system is for a specific sport.
Yes.
So you're discussing context. That sport's powerlifting. So in the sport of powerlifting, it's really good. But what happens when you take some of the stuff and you don't really understand it and you start to take that stuff and you implement it in the NFL? Well, maybe now you're creating a bunch of connective tissue injuries. Maybe now you're creating a bunch of joint injuries.
Yes. Well, even if we stay with the sport of powerlifting, even with the gear, if the bar decides to go sideways on a geared bench and the shoulder integrity isn't able to control that force of when it's out of that position, how? Yep. There it goes, right? So, or the same thing with the squat, if it goes probably less so than with the upper body, but you're going to see more with the upper body issues because there's more bar path variances with the shoulder that can happen than with the lower body. But interestingly enough, when I look at that comparison, the gear is essentially providing the protection that the internal system should be protecting.
Yeah.
Right. So it allows that nervous system to scale back up. But if it's raw powerlifting and then that's taken off, you're still going to look at this deficit as they get stronger and stronger and stronger of what that internal to the external is. Right. On the extreme, you're talking about, the linemen and so forth and this constraints, which how'd that go over with Lou? Because, because they are there, right? Because on the other end of that whole thing, if it's a high school lineman, I'd guess maybe 450, 500 pounds might be where the constraint would be. Maybe they could push it to 700, but to be able to do that, how much time and effort, focus is going to have to go there. Meanwhile, they may still not even know their plays. Or they may not be able to move laterally. So now it's being done in exchange. So a quality is being strengthened beyond the capacity that's actually required, where the other capacities are being not brought up to speed or regressing, because of all that. And then every sport will have different restraints with all that. And I think a lot of coaches will understand that, but they won't know where to go with that. It's like, okay, look, this kid squats enough. I guess we'll just have them sprint more.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it falls.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, you're 100% correct. Right. And, with lineman special strength, that's kind of like, it's kind of started off as like a fun project and then rapidly kind of turned into a business. And that's with Olin Kreutz, who played in the NFL for 14, 15 years. Right. Like I won't speak for him, but like his career is, you just got to put tape on. Right. And it's funny, like to what you're saying is it's like, he was kind of like in the position I am in where like, there's things missing. Right. There's more to like being a power lifter than just like, let's say a box squat, right? Like what you're saying, like there's other qualities, like you need a hip. You got to be able to get into a stance, right? So that's why like these other, let's say systems or strategies started to emerge was because there was more than just, the bar pass in powerlifting, right? And so yeah, I mean, and what ended up happening too, and this may be an interesting concept to discuss. So, the biological law of accommodation.
Explain it to me. I know, but explain it for the audience.
Yeah. So we'll try to keep it as simple as possible, right? But it essentially means that like you have biological, so we'll do it from a joint perspective. So a joint is a biological thing. You have the articulation of two bones. Those bones are encapsulated by white connective tissue called a capsule. And what happens is if all you're doing is like a linear motion, like a bench press, that capsule will start to accommodate to be able to that bench press, those lines of tissue in the bench press, which then is going to limit rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Does this make sense?
Especially the higher it gets, the more accommodation that there is, the stronger their bench.
Yes. Yes. Right. Okay. So what started happening was, I would work on, as I started to educate myself on like what these guys are doing, I started to do the training myself with George Halbert. Right. And so like, I knew kind of what these guys were going through, and girls. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, it was funny when I would do like joint assessments on them, I would see that their lift is going up. So like, let's say your bench press was 300 and now it's 315. So I'd ask them, I go, well, how's your training going? And they go, well, you're on your max effort days is your, if it's a shoulder, is your bench going up? Yeah. Bench started off, at 300, then went 305 and then went to 310. Now I'm deloading. Okay, perfect. So the bench is going up. And then I would assess the shoulder joint space. The shoulder joint space is going down. So I go, okay, external load is going up, but the internal capacity to move that load is going down. So now there's less tissue to transmit the force. The nervous system's constrained too, because now it's losing access to red tissue that it can use to produce force, right? And I'm like, this is the definition of an injury. Like if I put external load is going, everybody likes load management now, right? Load is going up, internal capacity is going down. Like that's just that. That's all you have to understand. Like that's not a good scenario to be in.
Yes. It's just a matter of time.
Correct. And so that's when I was like, oh shit, like I have to be making sure that these guys aren't losing joint range of motion. So now we actually have a trainable quality or treatable quality.
Yes.
When we're talking about rubbing tissue, hey, when do I know that I'm done? Well, does it feel better? Yeah, you're done then. You're good. Like, did you hear the actuator? Did you hear the click? Yeah, you're good.
Well, it's also the strengthening that range of motion too, right? Yeah. That's where the deficit is with a lot of the therapeutic modalities is you can get the range of motion back, right?
Yes.
But the range of motion when you get it back is going to be weak as piss.
Okay.
So then what has to be implemented in there to be able to strengthen that risky range of motion?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is a phenomenal concept. Okay. Because what you're saying is when the joint acquires a range of motion that it didn't have before. So you have,
or had before and lost.
Yeah. So let's say you had 30 degrees of shoulder joint internal rotation. We go to assess it. You have 15. Then we go ahead and treat it. And now you have 30. Yes. What you're saying is, but the tissue from 15 to 30 has not been exposed to any loading. Correct.
It hasn't had the accommodation of the other tissues, right? This is where you come in. Like this is the gap that I was talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Because think about it. And then let's overlay it. Well, you have an athlete that's really pushing the boundaries of what they can do. So like, are they going to do max effort training? Yeah, they are. Okay. So that tissue that hasn't been exposed to any loading is now going to have to take a training max. Okay. So you have to start to ask yourself, okay, am I putting this athlete at a higher risk of injury? Yes. Because that tissue has no exposure to loading. Okay. So how do you go about acquiring that range of motion?